Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be talking about daylight saving time.
Very timely.
It is very timely,
Yeah.
as always.
Pun intended, I hope.
Yes, pun intended. And as always, we have a great source here, a Forbes article, hot off the press, talking all about daylight saving time.
Always a hot topic.
Always a hot topic.
Yeah.
And the question is, will it stay or will it go? And this is going to be a really interesting one, I think.
I think so, too. And the Forbes article actually kind of starts in a way that I wasn't expecting. It starts with former President Trump.
Yes.
And his stance on daylight saving time.
Yeah, I found that a really interesting way to start the article, too.
Yeah, me too. And it's interesting because they point out that, early on he was very much against it, calling it inconvenient.
Right. Costly. Yeah.
All these things.
And then later on, he kind of softened his stance and was like, well, maybe it's a 50-50 issue.
Right. Which I think kind of reflects where a lot of America is right now.
I think so, too. And it's not like a president can just decide to get rid of daylight saving time, right?
No, exactly. We take an act of Congress. And even that's proven to be really tricky.
Yeah.
The article points out that the Senate passed a bill to make DST permanent in 2022.
Right.
But it's stalled in the House, so...
Yeah, so clearly very divided.
Yeah, it seems like there's no easy answer here.
Yeah. And so before we go too far, can we just kind of get everyone on the same page?
Sure.
When does DST start and end?
Yeah, this year we spring forward on Sunday, March 9th.
Okay.
At 2:00 a.m.
So we lose an hour.
Yes, we lose that precious hour of sleep.
It's always a shock to the system, even though it happens every year.
It really is. And, it kind of makes you realize how much our bodies rely on those natural light cycles. Even a small change can really throw things off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's worth remembering that daylight saving time, it wasn't really designed for how we live today.
Right.
It was a wartime policy
Wow.
to conserve energy.
So it's really a relic of the past, in a way.
In a way, it is.
Wow. And speaking of modern times, the article mentioned Elon Musk and his recent poll on X.
Yeah.
What was that about?
It was a very interesting poll.
Yeah.
He asked people a hypothetical question.
Okay.
If DST were to be canceled, would you prefer to shift the clock an hour earlier or an hour later? And the results were really interesting.
Okay.
Almost a perfect 50-50 split.
Wow. So kind of mirroring what Trump was saying as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it raises the question, was Musk trying to influence the debate or was he just curious about public opinion?
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, he's obviously a very influential person.
He is.
And he's close with a lot of politicians.
Right.
So it's possible he was testing the waters, but it's also possible he was just genuinely curious.
Right. You never know.
Yeah. It's hard to say for sure.
But it's definitely an interesting kind of twist in this whole saga.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put aside Musk and Trump for a second and just
Yeah.
get to the heart of this. What are the arguments for and against daylight saving time?
Yeah, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Yeah, let's hear them.
All right, well, on the pro-DST side, people often point to those longer daylight hours after work.
Right.
They argue that it leads to, more outdoor recreation,
Yeah.
more shopping,
Yeah. Makes sense.
maybe even less crime
Oh, wow.
because, there's more light.
Right. It's not as dark.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's the whole energy savings argument as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, people wouldn't have to turn on their lights as early in the evening.
Okay, so less energy use.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But the research on that is kind of mixed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some studies show a small decrease, but others suggest it might not be that significant
Okay.
or could even lead to more energy use in some cases.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Okay, well, what about the arguments against DST?
Right. Well, there's some pretty big concerns about health and safety.
Okay.
Studies have linked DST to a higher risk of heart attacks and strokes,
Oh, wow.
especially right after the time change.
Oh, that's a little scary.
It is. And there's also evidence of more traffic accidents
Right.
and workplace injuries because people are tired and their sleep is messed up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's kind of alarming to think about.
It is, yeah. It's just changing the clock, but it seems like it has a huge impact.
It really does. It shows how connected we are to those natural rhythms of day and night,
Yeah.
and messing with those rhythms can have big consequences,
Right.
even if we don't realize it.
And those health concerns have led some organizations to actually recommend that we just stick with standard time year-round.
Exactly. Yeah, the American Medical Association, for example, they're big proponents of that.
Okay.
They say standard time is better for our bodies and our overall well-being.
Okay, so we've got politicians changing their minds, billionaires doing polls, and doctors warning us about health risks.
Yeah,
This whole DST thing is anything but simple.
it really isn't.
But where do you stand on all this? Have you noticed any of those negative effects we've been talking about? We'll get into that and more right after the break.
Yeah, it really does sound like a lot to think about.
It's not just about, do I like having more daylight or, what's more convenient?
Right.
It's about, are there actual benefits to our health or to society? And then are there downsides as well?
Yeah, and I imagine some people don't really notice the time change while others are like completely thrown off.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, like, for me, it always takes me a few days to really adjust to that spring forward time change.
Yeah,
I'm always kind of tired and just like not feeling myself.
yeah. That's super common. And, it's not just about feeling tired. It's like it can affect your mood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, your ability to focus your immune system even. There's a
Wow.
lot of research on that, and they're finding that, for some people, those effects can be even stronger.
Oh, wow.
Like if they already have some health problems or if they
Oh,
work night shifts or something. Right. They're already dealing with a lot of sleep disruption.
exactly.
It's crazy to think that something as simple as changing the clock can have such a big impact.
It is. It really shows you that our bodies are super complex.
Yeah.
And, even little changes can throw things off.
Right. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond,
Yeah.
and then the ripples just go out and out and out.
Exactly. And that's why I think this whole debate goes beyond just personal preference.
Right.
It's about understanding the science of how our bodies work
Yeah.
and how they respond to light and dark.
So if it can have these negative consequences, why do we even do it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah. Are the benefits really worth the risks?
That's what a lot of people are trying to figure out. And it's not just a U.S. thing either.
Oh, really?
The article mentions that over 70 countries around the world observe DST.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's pretty widespread. And a lot of those countries are having the same debates about it.
So are there any countries that have just gotten rid of it?
Yeah, there are a few. Russia, for example, they abolished DST back in 2011.
Oh, okay.
They were worried about those negative health effects, and they didn't see any real energy savings.
Okay, so did things get better in Russia after they got rid of DST?
It's tough to say. The research is mixed.
Oh, okay.
Some studies say that there were fewer traffic accidents and heart problems, but other studies didn't find any real changes.
Hmm.
And some even found that things got worse in some ways, like more depression.
No, wow.
So it's not a simple answer.
Yeah, it sounds like getting rid of DST isn't like a magic solution.
No, definitely not. It just shows how complicated this whole issue is.
So we've talked about the arguments for and against DST, and we've seen how other countries are dealing with it. But what does this all mean for the future of DST here in the U.S.?
That is the big question.
Where do we go from here?
It seems like the current system isn't working perfectly. We've got people who love it, people who hate it. The science is kind of unclear, and politicians can't seem to agree on anything.
So what are our options?
Well, we could just keep doing what we're doing,
Right.
changing the clocks twice a year.
But we've talked about the problems with that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the best solution long term.
So what else could we do?
Well, we could get rid of DST completely, like Russia did.
And just stick with standard time.
Right. But we've seen that that might not solve all the problems either.
Right. And even without DST, we still have things like artificial light and late night work schedules.
Exactly. All those things can mess with our sleep, too.
So it sounds like we need to think bigger,
I-
not just about DST, but about how we manage our time in general.
Absolutely. And how we prioritize our health in a world that's kind of constantly lit up.
That makes sense, but where do we even begin?
Well, there are some really interesting ideas out there.
Yeah, tell me more. You were saying there are some interesting ideas out there.
Yeah, some researchers are talking about something called chronotype-based scheduling.
Chronotype-based scheduling, what is that?
It's basically the idea that, instead of having everyone start work or school at the same time,
Right.
we should tailor those schedules to people's individual sleep-wake preferences.
Oh, interesting. So like you're saying, if you're a night owl, you wouldn't have to be at work at 8 a.m.
Exactly. And if you're an early bird,
Right.
you wouldn't be stuck working late into the night.
Wow. I love that idea.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we all have different internal clocks.
Right.
And if we could align our schedules with those clocks, we could probably sleep better, be more productive, and even be less stressed.
That makes so much sense, but wouldn't that be like super hard to actually do?
Yeah, it would definitely be a challenge.
Right. Imagine trying to coordinate all that with schools and businesses and even public transportation.
Yeah, it would be a lot of work, but some companies and schools are already trying things like flexible hours and personalized
Oh,
schedules.
that's cool.
And, technology is getting better at tracking our sleep patterns.
Right.
So it might be easier to do this kind of thing in the future.
I hope so. It sounds like we're finally moving past this whole DST debate and starting to think about more creative solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a big takeaway from all of this. It's
Right.
not just about changing the clock, it's about changing how we think about time.
Yeah, realizing that time is valuable and we should use it wisely.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been such a fascinating conversation.
It has been.
I feel like I've learned so much about DST and about time in general.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And I hope it encourages you to, think about your own relationship with time
Yeah,
and how you can maybe tweak your schedule to feel your best.
I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah, see if you can become a morning person.
Uh-huh. Maybe.
But even if you don't, I hope this deep dive is giving you some food for thought.
It definitely has. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the world of daylight saving time.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep those clocks ticking and those minds curious.